keep working our way down the list of Big 12 coaches in our effort to get every single one on the show before the season is over. Very excited to check another name off the list today by having head coach of the Baylor Bears, Glenn Moore, join the 1012 again. Coach, welcome back.
Always good to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to get to pick your brain and talk about both the Bears and college softball as a whole. You've been doing this for a long time, had a lot of success. And at this point, I was talking with, I think Coach Eakin, and talking about there's some of the coaches have some Big 12 group chats where you guys are contacted. No. It was not Eakin. I forget now who it was. I'm sorry. There's so many different coaches we've talked to. Do you find yourself often chatting with some of the other Big 12 coaches about just the game in general and the conference and how your seasons are going?
Yeah, a little bit. Not as much during the season. We certainly connect on the recruiting trail all the time, and think that's a sense of therapy for us. We get to I think we complain too much sometimes, but we do point out the positives and the opportunity to influence some lives and try to bring each other full circle back to that point quite often as the game changes for us old folks a lot more than we want it to, and certainly more rapidly than we want to.
I don't want to make any comments about how long you've been doing this or age or anything, but do you feel like you've taken on any sort of sage advisor role to some of the new members of the conference, coaches in the Big 12, and just newer head coaches in general?
Yeah, I actually enjoy that part of it. Relied on a few whenever I was young that helped me out a great deal, and have contemplated even writing a book a few times to help young coaches understand that what they're going through, they're not the only ones, and sharing that a little bit to try to encourage them. But the bottom line is we have a great opportunity to change a lot of lives that not every profession gives you. And sometimes we put too much emphasis on the bottom line, which is wins or losses, which is also important. But, I just enjoy sharing some whatever little wisdom I have from experience and from failure, and doing a few things right here and there. I like sharing that.
That's awesome. Well, I think there's camaraderie amongst all sports when there comes to coaching. I think when it comes to each individual school, you see a lot of that where coaches within different universities are going to have communication with each other and form bonds. But softball, I don't know if it's just a matter of because it doesn't get the attention that others do, that because it's a little bit of feels like a little bit of a tighter knit community there than say a men's basketball or a football where there's so many people involved, there's so much going on, or there's so many schools that are out there playing. Softball feels like this really, really close knit community amongst even all the schools at different levels.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think probably when in regards to say a football or a basketball, the pressure to win is so enormous, and it is with our sport as well. It certainly has grown to garnering that kind of respect, and that those expectations are certainly there. But I think there's still that old school feel of being able to identify with what each other is going through, and I think there's certain areas that we've moved into the same realm of some of the other sports that I'm not really that crazy about. Certainly when it comes to the recruiting stuff and what's legal, what's not legal, and pushing the envelopes in those areas. Commitments, for example, used to be sacred. You didn't mess with commitments, and now until they're signed, and even some situations after they're signed, there's a lot of moving toward the tampering side of it that I'm not happy with, and wish we could go back to the old school way of doing things. But overall, I think there is more of a family sense in our sport. And can't speak for every sport, but I know there's still that camaraderie within our sport. You see that at the convention, you see that in recruiting trails and hanging out and making phone calls, text messaging, and things like that. I think it's still very prevalent.
Now, you guys have not yet faced one of the three new schools to join the conference this year in Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. You do have Arizona State on the schedule later this season. No Arizona, no Utah. But of course, you've got BYU and UCF are still new to this conference. Looking at this new 11-team Big 12, what are your thoughts on kind of where the Big 12 is and these new additions these last 2 years now that we're kind of at least partway into this first season of this new membership?
Well, I think the word comes to mind is parity. I think you got a lot of tradition. You got the Arizona's tradition, the national championships, Arizona State, Utah. We haven't played and won't play this year unless it's in the Big 12 tournament, or Arizona, but we've played them throughout our time here at Baylor. In fact, we played Utah last year on our way out to play BYU, so very familiar with that program as well. And I just think there's a lot more parity. I think you're going to see teams beat each other up, and it's going to make for some great softball. It's a good, strong softball conference, and it's only going to get better.
I mean, that's kind of been the word. I'm in this college softball Discord channel, and the word when it comes to the Big 12 this season is just chaos. Because every time you think you know where a team is or who a team is or what's going to happen, we get an upset here, and we get what we perceive as an upset there. I mean, it is. Parity is a great word for it. It's been a very interesting Big 12 season because while there's some things we kind of expected coming into the year that have landed kind of where we thought, this really does feel like a conference that has more depth than ever, but is very up and down just because of there is a ton of youth in this Big 12 conference this year. Like obviously there's seniors and names we know, but you look at young Utah and young UCF and young Arizona State. And I mean, across this whole conference, there's just there's, I don't want to call it a youth movement, but almost like it's a reload here and we're building toward, some really peak softball being played. What are your thoughts kind of on what you've seen in the conference so far from who all you've played and scouted and your thoughts on where this conference kind of stands within college softball as a whole?
Yeah, I think I think you nailed it. There's a lot of youth, room to grow. The problem is with the transfer portal, you don't know what one team's going to look like from one year to the next. And pitching's so important as we're experiencing right now. We went into this year scheduled for this year with 7 arms, and 4 that we thought were legitimate. We're down to really 1 arm that can compete for us. And she was one we brought into being a more of a closer, middle relief in Lillie Walker. But, a year from now, I could have 3 more pitchers that make a big difference. So you can change what you see now is no guarantee of what you're going to see a year from now. So the youth, while it's good, could change drastically over the course of the year. And I think that the Big 12 is only going to get better. I think it's it's a very popular conference. We're located in a good region of the U.S. and there's a lot of talent from the states that we're recruiting from. Although the recruiting at Power Fours are now going heavily into the portal, but there's a reason for athletes to want to come play in these schools that are in these areas and in the Big 12 region. So it's a fun conference. There's going to be, I think in the future, it's going to be it is now hard to sweep weekends. You're going to, play a lot more closer games, extra inning games. It's just a fun conference to be in. The crowds are good. The attendance is good. It's a popular sport.
Yeah, sport that continues to grow in popularity. This conference is so much fun. I think we use the word chaos, and for coaches and teams, it's not a great word. For fans of the sport, it's fun to watch because you don't know what's going to happen each week, and you get so many different results. It's a ton of fun. I love that you mentioned your pitching because that segues perfectly into one of the questions I have for you. I mean, we saw this past weekend, you mentioned Lillie Walker, transferred in from Duke this past offseason, pitched 2 full games and another basically 14.1 innings for you guys this past weekend. Talk about her development because she did seem to struggle a little out of the start of the season, and she's really become this really important arm for you. Talk about her improvement throughout this season and what is the state of your pitching core?
Yeah, well, we'd be in really bad shape without Lillie. She's been a gift. Our intentions were to use her the way Duke used her, and as a closer, one time through the lineup, I think lefty off speed, mix of speeds, very intelligent, mature, wisdom-filled pitcher that brings a lot to our bullpen. But our intentions were to have Daria Orm healthy. She's been 2 years removed from her surgery. Casey West is also medically redshirting. We've lost a couple to the transfer portal. So what we had intended on having would be a bullpen with a lot of maturity and a lot of age, a lot of skill to grow two of our freshmen in Sadie Ross and Lexi Warnicki and give them an opportunity to get some touch and go innings in and protect them a little bit or without letting them get beat up. And unfortunately, because of the state of things and injuries and Dari not getting completely healthy, Dari Orm, that is, we've had to rely on Lillie to pitch the bulk of our innings. She gives us a chance to win every game that she's in. But as you saw, we started our 3 games in a row this past weekend because we're in that situation right now. The 2 freshmen that were pitching, Lexi Warnicki and Sadie Ross, both are coming off injuries. Sadie was released within a week prior to our opening tournament. Lexi was released right before Christmas, but had not had enough opportunity to really get her game back, and has still felt pain throughout the season. So we're relying on 2 pitchers that aren't fully back from injury, and Lillie Walker, who we're asking to carry the load as a starter. Pitched her first collegiate complete game this year earlier in the year, and we had 2 complete games out of her this past weekend. So she's grown. Coach Newman's done a great job of her hitting it off together. They work well together. Changes a lot of speeds and keeps a lot of hitters out on their front foot. And we've got a great defense. I've said all along, possibly the best defense I've ever put on the field. And we've really had to rely on them to keep us in games because Lillie's not a strikeout pitcher. So she's going to get a lot of ground balls, a lot of missed hits, and she's going to squelch big innings, but she's not a strikeout pitcher. So we need that defense behind her. And it's been pretty consistent. We just have put too much pressure on our offense to score runs and haven't done enough of that. But yeah, we're in a difficult position pitching wise. We've got to rectify that in the off season, but this is what we've got right now. You can't change mid course, and we're got to run with what we have right now.
I mean, it reminds me to some extent kind of Arizona State last season. You have this team that on paper going into the year has the talent to compete, make it into regionals, and then the injury bug is, it feels like once it bites one, it just starts biting all over the place and it spreads. And that certainly seems like it's been the case for your pitching staff where, again, on paper heading into the season looked like one of the best in the Big 12, if not one of the best in the country. And now the depth has just been killed by injuries and players trying to heal. And so like how is your team kind of getting through what's been, I'll use the word, a little bit of a disappointing season, giving expectations coming into the year?
Yeah, from a win-loss standpoint, it's a disappointing season, but camaraderie, confidence-wise, this team still believes that they can do something unexpected. We'll always have that hope, even if it goes down to the Big 12 tournament. Losing a couple of big teams out of the Big 12, and we talked about parity early on, leaves the Big 12 tournament open for the team that gets hot. Whereas in the past few years, Oklahoma and even Texas as of late, it's hard to get by those two. Certainly we have a couple of big teams that are performing well in Oklahoma State and Texas Tech and Arizona. There's some teams that are performing well, but you don't have to play all those teams in the tournament. So I think there's going to always be hope with this team. But I've said many times, there's not a team I've ever put in a uniform here at Baylor, and this is my 25th year here, that I've loved any more than this team and love to go to practice with. And you want it for them. But reality is that this game is built around the kid in the circle. And there's some things that you preach your whole life, control the controllables. There's certain things that you can't control. And it's no use in beating a dead horse, if you will, and telling your team you just got to play better whenever they're playing their hearts out and they're practicing their hearts out. And you just have had some bad luck. And our hope now is that our 2 freshman pitchers that have been hurt and asked to do more than we had hoped that they could do can catch fire at some point in time and help Lillie out. And if they do, then we've got a chance to do something down the stretch here. But we're running out of time. We know that, but it's not going to change our approach to how we practice and how we play and how we affect each other's lives. And quality of life in this sport as a coach, as a player is very important to me. And I want them to be a little bit uncomfortable whenever they're not living up to expectations, but understanding the reason why you're not living up to expectations in a sport that's centered around what's in the circle is very important. And we get that, and this team gets that. But leadership is good. We played well this past weekend. We're not going to blow anybody away because we're going to give up too much. But we played well this past weekend against a very good and very hot Central Florida team. We just got to build off of that and continue to believe and compete every inning.
Yeah, it's a great series win for your team there in Waco. Getting 2 of 3 from UCF feels like you hope from the outside, and I'm sure inside that's a sign of maybe a turning point for this team, that they're figuring things out. I mean, when you look at what happened this week and you look at your team through practice through the week, where do you feel like you've seen the biggest improvement so far in the last few weeks as you continue to build towards trying to get to the postseason?
Well, the offensive production has been a struggle ever since the first couple of weekends. I mean, we go to A&M the first weekend and play them, put up a 7 spot, and don't have the pitching. That's when the light bulb really came on. We didn't have the pitching to hold on to that. I think it was 7-1 in the 6th inning, and we end up losing the game 10-7. But we knew we had the offense there. But as you start putting the pressure on yourself to score 6, 7, 8 runs a game to win games, then you start scoring 2 and 3. We also played a very tough schedule. Palm Springs, come back. We play Oklahoma twice here. Play Texas. So we faced some 70-mile-an-hour plus pitchers over and over and over. And I think you lose a little bit of confidence whenever you're not swinging the bat exceptionally well against quality All-American type pitching. Then the mountain starts to grow a little bit. So I think we're at a position, to answer your question, we're at a position where we're understanding that the purpose of scheduling that was so that our offense would be prepared when it mattered most. That's what we've done traditionally here. I didn't put together schedules to build stats, to look good on paper. I put together schedules that would prepare us for the end of the season, for the final stretch of the Big 12, for postseason. And this is a little more dire situation than we have been in the past because of our record. Where RPI are not good at all right now. So you need to win some of those games, and traditionally we have. But we are in a position offensively to start exploding a little bit and scoring some more runs and pushing runs across the plate. We need to get Leah Cram back in our lineup. She got hit a couple weeks ago in the hand and has been out. I think she's out for 2 more weeks, and she was a 400-plus hitter for us that was making a big difference. Taria Coleman is starting to come back around after a concussion. Shailene Govan, 2-time All-American, can get it done. We've got the tools. We're starting to see that offense that we dreamt of show up a little bit here and there, glimpses of it, and hopefully down the stretch we'll be able to put up those 6, 7, and 8 spots.
Yeah, again, injuries. I mean, you look at the lineup again on paper. Govan, we know how good she is. Leah Cran's been a bright spot. Getting in Taria Coleman, she's been fantastic. And just it's hard when you look at it and say there's nothing you can do about injuries. You can't coach injuries better. You've got the roster you've got, and I think you guys have been working through it as best you can. But it's tough from a coaching sense. Like, how do you communicate that to your team? Like, look, we can't fix injuries. We can't change the situation. Like, we have to work through it. That just feels like such a hard thing to feel like this thing and then this thing and then this thing and then this thing, and they just pile up. How do you mentally work through with your team to kind of get past that?
So, Phillip, I don't think there's one set answer to that question. I think it's keeping a pulse on your team and knowing when you need to push the buttons. When apathy is setting in with your team, then you need to push some buttons. Reading your team, knowing that your team's in a good place. We had a great practice yesterday. The girls were locked into film session. We had a different type of practice where we watched film with a group, and then we went out and brought in another group. We did this 3 times, and they were locked in. So you get a read for your team and where they are psychologically. If they're in a good place and you're giving them what they need to be successful, then there's hope. But if they start checking out on you and they're going through the motions and practices, and it's a challenge practice wise. Every day cannot be monotonous. You can't do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity, right? So we do a lot of planning to try to make it a little more competitive, change up practice routines, and even take time off if we feel we need them. So I don't know that there's a bottled answer for that. I just think maybe some of what I've gained as a coach from a wisdom standpoint has led me to be able to read teams a little bit better and give them what they need to be the best they can be. At least I feel that way. There was no coaching methods class that ever taught us how to deal with the lack of having 1, 2, and 3 pitchers, in boots or a cast, or not pitching for you or not pitching well for you, and trying to figure out what to do. When you're at a private school that costs $80,000 a year, you're not going to have 8 people in your bullpen because you can't spend all your scholarships on your bullpen. So that's part of it. But there is no coaching method that tells you how to do that. You just got to read your team and hopefully get some feedback from those around you. Your supporting staff is crucial in these situations. And I'm still very optimistic that whatever the outcome of this season, it's not going to be a wasted season, and these kids are going to fight hard all the way to the end. I'm very, very pleased with our leadership here. We have 11 seniors on this team. I've never had that many. I want to fight hard for them to experience whatever success they can. We're certainly not throwing in the towel. I haven't read that from any of them that they are.
That's awesome. That's what you want to hear. I think that's a sign of great culture. I think that's a sign of recruiting, players who are great leaders and great people. And I think that's a credit to you and your staff as well. So that's what you want to hear, is that despite the frustrations and what's gone wrong, no one's focused on that. You're focused on continuing to achieve a goal you set, even if it's further away than you hoped it would be. Coach, as always, you are a fantastic interview. It's great to be able to get your thoughts and insights. Before we let you go, a few things I do want to ask you about real quickly. First of all, I do have to tell you, your best friend Leah Nelson wanted me to tell you that she and a number of other Iowa State alums will be there in Ames for your series at the end of the year. So if you hear anyone yelling at you from the stands, just know she's a coming, and I think she's going to be very excited to see you.
Leah's possibly my favorite opposition I've ever coached against. She's something else, and I'll be looking forward to see her. I stayed around for her senior day recognition when everyone was in the bus, which just because of our banter back and forth that we'd had throughout the years. And I certainly love her, and we'll be looking forward to seeing her.
That's fantastic. Okay, number one, if you were playing today, what would be your walk-up song?
I'd probably have some maybe some Bon Jovi, Tom Petty. I don't know if I can come up with a song right now. Memory Lane from Old Dominion. How about that? I'll do that one.
Okay, that's a good choice. Good choice. Peanut butter and jelly. What is your jelly of choice?
Grape jelly.
Okay, a traditional name. Yeah. Okay. I know we've talked in the past that sometimes it's been a struggle to get in non-conference some of the teams you'd like to come to Waco. If there's one team you could get to agree to come for a non-conference game in Waco, who would it be?
Let's go with Notre Dame. I know that may be off the cuff, but the Baptists versus the Catholics. How about that?
All right, we'll see what we can do.
All right.
What is your favorite Baylor uniform for your team?
I think I like the anthracite, a little bit of gold trim. I think I'm going to go with the anthracite. I liked our white unis before they started wearing white socks and white belt, but it just it needed some definition. So I'm going to go with the anthracite.
I like that. Okay. This year's team, who is let's say who is this year's Leah Nelson? Who's your biggest trash talker?
Ashlyn Walkendorf.
Okay.
Without a doubt. My right fielder, 9-hole hitter. She's the one I want, just not just trash talking. I have to calm her down a little bit, but she's the one I want with me in the dark alley whenever I need somebody to protect me. She will run through a wall for me. So I have to go with Ashlyn Walkendorf.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. Coach, as always, it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you and your girls for the rest of the season. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Always fun, Phillip. We appreciate you.